Good morning, and welcome to the Forum for World Education's Young Leaders sponsorship event. The Forum for World Education is a nonprofit world organization with headquarters throughout the world. Its mission is to transform education in answer to the skills and knowledge requirements of current and future generations of society, its economic growth, societal progress, and sustainability. The forum aims to provide an opportunity to exchange ideas between leaders across the business, education, and public policy world, and to create new generations with the knowledge, skills, and mindset for challenging a rapidly changing world. We are pleased today to have this chance to talk with you. And we want to first of all thank one of our sponsors, Easy Transfer, a financially technology platform that focuses on cross-border educational payment services by one of the world's largest card networks. It is focused on supporting and promoting international education exchange students throughout the world, and it is one of the key topics that we will be talking about today. And we thank them for their support for this very important initiative. I would now like to introduce the moderator for this webinar, Mr. Eric Gao, who is the CEO and head of investment banking at Univest Securities, LLC. He is one of the most active and diverse investment bankers with an exceptional following in both Asia Pacific and North America. Mr. Gao brings more than a decade of extensive experience in banking and capital markets and has led over $1 billion worth of transactions, including a full suite of private placement, initial public offerings, following in public, registered, and other direct offerings. Since his arrival in the US, Mr. Gao has built the firm into a full-service global banking and distribution platform with investment banking, equity capital markets, debt capital markets, and institutional sales, high net worth retail sales, and trading and research department. It is through his leadership as a businessman that Mr. Gao has supported the Young Leaders program, and more specifically, helping the Forum for World Education reach a broad global network on very important topics. And with that, let me introduce Edric to you. Edric?
Thank you, Steve. That's very kind of you saying all that good stuff about me. But most importantly, I think we're here today to exchange our thoughts and opinions regarding multicultural, multinational education and how these education backgrounds then went on and shaped the individuals into the person they are today. It's my firm opinion, unfortunately, that has been taken away from us to a certain extent during the last, especially 3-4 years. And those changes will have prolonged consequences to the society on both continents, across different continents, should I say. So the reason why we're having this particular seminar for the Young Leaders program today is to ring this bell and serve also as a wake-up call for audience around the world to make sure we are on the same page and understand that international education are very, very important and critical and serve as an inevitable tie between different cultures, different nations, and business. So with that being said, I am a true beneficiary of having international educated background. I was born and raised in China and lived in China for the first 13 years of my life. So I understand the culture, I speak the language, and then I went on to pursue a higher education in Vancouver, Canada. Ended up graduating UBC, which is University of British Columbia. And for those of you who are actually going into UBC, I would really recommend that school. And shortly after that, I spent about 10 years in Vancouver and then went on to pursue my career in New York City, which is my home city, where I now consider to be a New Yorker after the 12th year in New York. My career is here, my firm is here, I established a family in New York City, but that tie between the Asia community and especially the Asian investment community and the fact that I understand their culture and their way of business, their mentality, and can use that and apply that in my day-to-day operating is predominantly the reason myself and my career and my firm get to thrive in this kind of business. So in my team, during last year, we've done $800 million of transactions. And as a result of me having that background and my team understanding both continents and both cultures, half of that is cross-boundary transaction between Asia and US. I think by having a contrast of seeing the culture there, understanding the culture there, and seeing the culture here in the US and Canada, that gives me more of a perspective in terms of understanding what do people really want, what is the real demand, and what are people are trying to go after. So in business, these three things are extremely, extremely important. So with that being said, I'm honored to be here, to be the moderator. This is my first time moderating a FWE Young Leaders program seminar, and I hope we can come back to this and make this into a series. So the Young Leaders program will continuously to put out good content with trendy topic, which I think and we believe are near dear to our heart and also important for the audience to take in consideration in pursuing their own education and their own career. I'm again delightful to have the guest speakers today. These are outstanding individuals that we have as ambassadors in our program. And some of them physically could not be here with us on camera today, but there's, the first speaker I wanted to introduce you is a beautiful French young lady with the name of Sophie Schleicher, who has spent an interesting part of her last 3 years in China and the UK. And again, she couldn't be here with us live on camera today, but she was so kind to shoot a short video clip, and we'll move on to show that clip for now, and then we'll come back to the live section with other guest speakers.
Thank you very much for involving me in this webinar. I'm Sophie Schleicher, Youth Ambassador of International Education of FWE. During the last 3 years, I undertook several experiences that broadened my vision on the multicultural world we live in, and that made me understand the importance of being immersed in another culture than the one we grew up in. So in 2019, after finishing high school, I had a strong desire to devote some time to just explore a completely different country than the one I grew up in, which was France. And so I grabbed the opportunity to teach ballet in a primary school in China, in Shanghai. And I must say I learned a lot by interacting with the students, but also with the teachers in the primary school. But I got the deepest insight into the Chinese culture by living with the Chinese family. I followed their rhythms, discovered their habits, but also learned about their customs. After this gap year, I started my undergraduate studies in the field of neuroscience in England. Of course, going to England was like being in my backyard compared to China, but still, I discovered a lot about the British culture by being there in the country, although I had studied it in school. And this is the first thing I realized when going abroad. Being immersed in another country really allows to open the eyes on all the aspects of that culture. And this allows us to surpass the partial knowledge we have and that we build through academic learning, but most especially nowadays through social media. Something I discovered, for instance, in China was the really strong sense of cooperation. And I saw it because the teachers in my primary school did some exchanges with other provinces' schools, and they exchanged their knowledge and their methods of teaching. And this sense of cooperation was not something I suspected before going to China. What I also realize is that it is not enough to go abroad with a passive mindset and adopting the lens of our own culture to apprehend differences. There really is the necessity to go abroad with an open mind and an open heart and be open to any diversity and cultural differences. And there is a sentence of Albert Einstein that I find particularly adapted to this mindset. It states, "We must not only learn to tolerate our differences, we must welcome them as the richness and diversity which can lead to true intelligence." So in this sense, cultural exchanges proposed by universities are really the opportunity to enable students to discover their own world, the multicultural world they live in. But in my opinion, these exchanges are even more important for the students and universities welcoming foreign students. Because in one sense, people having the desire and curiosity to go abroad already have that open mindset and they want to discover and create a bond with another culture. But the people welcoming foreign students, who are maybe not even conscious of their stereotype view, then get the chance and are confronted to an individual and can create a one-to-one relationship, which allows them to surpass their stereotyped view and also just to open their eyes on the individual they have in front of them and not only on what they see on social media. And in fact, I think these cultural exchanges are even more important in the world we live in nowadays, because we tend always to think that we have a broad and complete vision on the subjects we read about online or we see on social media. And we always forget the confirmation bias that in fact only drives us to look for information that confirms our existing knowledge. So in one sense, the best solution is not having to look for the information, but being directly confronted to it with an individual coming in your own country and allowing to create this relationship and maybe friendships that just surpass all the stereotypes and that can open the eyes on the true culture of the individual. And in fact, universities play a major role in this bond. They can be the place of reunion, discovery, and cooperation. And I really think that the lowered acceptance rate of US universities to foreign students is a quite critical point, and the impact will be observed in the coming years when, in fact, this generation has to work together to face some major problems, as we saw in the last years. So, when adopting a mindset of curiosity, tolerance, and acceptance, cultural exchanges really create the opportunity to discover our world. And through deep understanding and acceptance of each other, we can destroy fixed stereotypes and judgments and consequently avoid racism and conflicts. Thank you.
On behalf of FWE and the audience group, I really would like to thank Sophia for the speech. As she was pointing out, that's beautifully put. We must not only learn to tolerate each other's differences, we must also welcome them as richness and diversity, which can then lead to intelligence. Albert Einstein. So that is beautifully put, and that's very wise to keep in life. And I can speak to it in my own experience, especially coming from Vancouver City, which is a beautiful, beautiful town. People are much, much more slow-paced than New York, and because of the British kind of influence and the French influence there, people also tend to be a little more, patient, right? So when we first came to New York City, the difference between the people are something I had to personally open up and confront with, and then later on figure out and fall in love with the culture here in New York. So for everyone going into a new different culture, a new society, always keep an open mind and always open yourself up to other people and try to feel and get a sense of what they're trying to say to you, and trying to, go through the bushes and really find out the reason why they talk and they think that way. So, I really wish I had an opportunity to talk to Sophia today in person, because one of the questions that I have for her is whether if she had picked up any Chinese language while teaching ballet in Shanghai. I'm sure she did, but Chinese language is a difficult language to learn. So I'd love to have a chance to, get her opinion on whether that's something that she's gonna further pursue. Our second guest speaker today, Tony Gao, is a young Chinese entrepreneur who has made his career in a company called Easy Transfer, which is a #1 payment service company for international students from China going to US and every other country. And he was very established as, very young age, Forbes 25 under 25. And I consider him as a colleague of mine in my own same line of work. So without further ado, let's welcome Tony Gao. Tony, can you show yourself on camera?
Glad to be here. Thanks for the introduction, Edric.
Of course, Tony. How are you doing, first of all?
I'm great, like sitting in the Beijing office, and really hope I got the chance to visit you guys in New York City.
Yeah, well, that chance will come soon. I hope everything is safe and sound in Beijing for you. Why don't we start with a little introduction, yourself and your company. We'd like to learn more.
Sure. Like I actually moved to US like 11 years ago when I was 15 years old. And so like at that time, I actually went to an all-boys Catholic boarding school in Omaha, Nebraska. And I was the first international Chinese students in the history of the school. So from there, I actually went to USC studying business administration in Marshall School of Business for undergrad. And after 4 years of studies, eventually I went to Harvard Business School, taking a semester of the MBA, like a degree, and then like taking gap years, and then joined or like started the new ventures, Easy Transfer. And now the company has supported more than 2,000 institutions across 9 different countries. They have nearly 700 employees across 5 different regions. And last year, they were able to make around 30 billion RMB in transaction volumes. So, but like overall, like it's truly great to be here and appreciate for the invitations.
No, of course, it's amazing to have you. Again, very, very great story. Fantastic story to start. You don't see many international students who, I can't say that, but you don't see as many international students who made a career and be such an entrepreneur at this kind of young age as you are. So now, I guess you said EG Transfer has 600 to 700 employees, and these are people, around the world, or are they only in US and China?
I mean, they're like all over the world. Like they're like from China, from India, from Malay, from Vietnam, and also like India. So, but like they're like after studying, like they actually currently stay in US, UK, Canada, Australia. So basically everywhere.
Okay, so then I must have to think that with the pandemic, the communication between different divisions, around the world must be tough. And how do you manage that?
I mean, that's a great question. So like, I mean, like we have to kind of admit that it is like indeed quite challenging to build an international team. I mean, like think back to the time when my like high school just started, like back to the high school years. When I first arrived in the US, I mean, like it's an all boys high school, Catholic high school, and I mean, like I was super afraid, and but like that experience actually allowed me to become more accepting and open-minded to other religion beliefs and the culture practice. And also like because I could play basketball, I get quite along like with other like boys at the school, and feel it was likely to be like in the like team environment where like people came from different countries and backgrounds. So like now I can better understand and communicate with my colleagues who actually come from various like backgrounds in terms of culture and beliefs.
That's great. That's good. Yes, having a hobby and sharing the same interests definitely will help with that. Music, sports. And you went to USC and Howard and Mount Michael, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What do you think what's the most important lesson that you learned from these classes you took at USC and all the other schools? And what do you think how do you think you then transfer the knowledge from the book into the real life application running your business?
Great question. So like my college professor, Norm Wasserman, who was the head of USC entrepreneurship initiatives, and he actually coached many entrepreneurs, like the founder of Twitter, the founder of Pandora. He taught me a very, very important lesson. So in order to create a successful product, you kind of like need to have a unique selling proposition, which we always call it the USP. So like it will become like the company's top competitive advantage. So like when we see that international students family in developing countries in Asia, such as China, India, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Indonesia, they all have similar habits, preference, and challenges when making international payments to overseas institutions. And from there, we see the opportunity. And since like basically we know more about what our target user care about, including good service, good pricing, because like generally like international students, like the difference between them and the local students is international students, they are often self-funded, which means that their parents, their family members or relatives are the one who paying for their education expenses. So like our years of experience in finance and payment sectors means that we are also more familiar with the local financial infrastructures. So like generally, like, I mean, like a user might just go there, go through our platform and think international payments are not that hard, like should be pretty simple to pay after all. But this only comes because our continuous effort to improve the whole process after understanding the local rules, the consumer behaviors, the consumer habits of each countries and regions. These factors all added up in order for us to create the most suitable product for the international students and their families.
Interesting. So you started all this during when you were still in university, right?
Yeah.
In USC. So what the school at the time, did they have any entrepreneurs program that supported you, or any special, because you were doing this? Were there any special guidance you were getting from the school, a mentor and any sort? Because I'm going to assume there is. To me, there is definitely many of them, but I just didn't have the luxury to stay in Canada and keep doing what I did. So I had to come to New York. So I want to ask you that. So USC, what was the story there, and what kind of support you were getting from the school?
Yeah, definitely. Like USC, like it gives me it gives me great confidence on my venture. So like generally, like I would say that without the support of USC back then, there would be like no successful easy transfer today. Seriously, like at that time, like think about this, we were a Chinese international student startup team, and American universities, they had no reason to trust or partner with us, especially for tuition payment that could consider like easily reach over $20,000 per transaction. So the university, they would also to bear great risk in order to endorse us, right? So like, like at that time, USC had around 5,000 international students from China, and the university already provided a variety of payment options for international students. So, but like when USC learned that like we can help solve the unique payment like difficulties challenging Chinese international students and their families, such as foreign exchange quotas and payers who have always have troubles with English, the payment process actually required, like the one-on-one customer service representatives. We have the expertise and we could fill in the missing pieces of the puzzles for the university. So the school really appreciated for the work that we have done and was willing to add us to the list of payment options alongside this other industry giants to give Chinese students more choice. But one thing I remember it super touched me was that when President Nikias had a scheduled meeting with me, and he told me that even if your product only serves 1% of USC students, we will support it. The needs of any minority group deserves the same amount of attention. I was deeply moved by his commitment and his words. And it gives me a lot of confidence and determinations to believe that a startup from China can go out to the world. And today, like Easy Transfer Us, we already supported students' payments to more than 2,000 institutions in 9 different countries, thanks to the support I got from USC.
Wow. So, one of the things that we've noticed recently, comparing with, I think I'm a little, maybe a few years older than you, but when we were graduating in North America, no matter it's Canada, US, most of us, or at least half of us, chose to pursue somewhat of a career first in North America, and then later on make a career choice, whether to go back to Asia or some other country to continue pursue a higher career, or to stay in the States and establish a root here, right? That again, coming back to my first initial point at the opening of the seminar, that has taken away from us over the last couple of years, especially. Maybe it's for pandemic, it's also somewhat political, and we're going to stay away with that. But what do you think the reason there could be for the students graduating to choose now to not even want to try and to kind of get a sense of what the working environment is here, but just go straight back to where they're coming from, where they came from, and what do you think the consequences of that could be in the longer run for companies like us in terms of job hiring, right? Because one of the major difficulties that I have is to have a workforce that is shaped in a way where the skill set and expertise is to our liking, right? And we, in the line of work that we do and you do, we require a very specific skill set, a set of skill sets, right? And then these candidates are becoming more difficult to locate. So I'm truly concerned here. I just wanted to see if you shared somewhat the same thought.
Definitely, like a great question. So like I'm to be honest, I'm like quite concerned with this situation right now, since each year we can see the students payment, the details of the payment transactions. We know which schools they're going to, which country they're going to study in, and the majors, the schools they're picking from. So from the list, I see dramatic changes over the past 5 years. So at the beginning, a lot of students, they try to involve in the business schools, but nowadays, most of them actually start to choose the engineering schools because the H-1B, the work visa required the minimum payment amount, the salary, the wages amount. So a lot of international students, they just shift their interest. I mean, especially for undergrad, college students, at that time, remember when we at the undergrad schools, you're from UBC, I'm from USC, a lot of local students, they don't even have a decided major. So at USC, we have 2 years until sophomore year, until the end of sophomore year, we can still have the chance to pick the majors. But nowadays, a lot of international students, if they want to stay in the country after graduation, they kind of have to go to the engineering schools. Think how limited or how competitive that could be. And I'm quite worried, since the country could lose a lot of talents in the long run. And I really hope all the colleges could push the policies and look for it in the long run.
Thank you, Tony. I want to thank you for your time. And then what we just talked about, so we have a next interesting young gentleman with the name of Kusi Homburger, who actually went abroad to pursue education and now coming back to the States and have an amazing career and successful career with Dauber Consulting. And Kusi, I wanna bring you onto the camera if you can turn your camera on.
Yeah, camera's on. Hi everyone. Nice to be here.
Hey Kusi. So yeah, it's delightful to meet you again. I've had a privilege to chat with you a couple of weeks ago, and we had a brief chat. So again, this whole international education is near dear to my heart. I'm sure it is to you. Could you please, again, with the first a short brief introduction on your background and what you do and your educational history, and then we'll move on to a few questions and your thoughts and opinions on a few things.
Sure. Thank you, Idrik, and thank you to the organizers. It's great to be with you all today. My name is Kusi. I'm a partner at Dahlberg Advisors. It's a management consulting company that focuses 100% on social and environmental impact issues. I'm based in our Washington, DC office. We do have a global footprint of 30 offices across all continents and around 750 employees. So now I'll go way back to the beginning. I'm a firm believer in intercultural exchange, in international education opportunities. I've been a beneficiary throughout my life. I was actually born in South America. I was born in Peru. So I'm both a Peruvian and an American citizen. Moved back to the US when I was 4.5. Grew up in Philadelphia. In my high school years, I had the luxury, honestly, to be, I'm one of one of the people who grew up in a system, in an education system that allowed me to have plenty of opportunity. But I did an exchange program in high school where I went to Spain. Lived there for 3 months in the Galicia region, so in the north. And it was a chance for me to, I already spoke Spanish, but didn't in the US, you don't get to practice that much, or at least in the past didn't. But it was a chance for me to sort of hone up my language skills. And it was also a first exposure to a different sort of way of living. And honestly, some of those experiences really stood out to me. They had a much later schedule. School started later, school ended later. They ate dinner much later. They ate different things. The way they organized themselves in terms of the family.
And they drink a lot of wine.
They do drink a lot of wine, yeah. And so it was, that was definitely eye-opening. And then when I went to college at Penn, which is where I got to know Cheng, or actually I knew Cheng from before I went to college. So anyways, that's another story. But I also did study abroad. And it was probably my favorite year is when I went to study abroad in my junior year. I didn't do anything too exotic. I went to Australia, to Sydney, which was about as far away as you could go from Philadelphia. I went there because the Olympics were happening. It was the year 2000. And so I was there during the Olympic Games, which was honestly one of the most joyful times of my entire life. Just to be part of an international event like that, see the international competition. It's based around competition, but it's actually about cooperation. And not being an athlete, but just being around people from all different countries and different backgrounds, et cetera, was a wonderful experience. I also got to learn a little bit about the British educational system and how the university system works in Australia. I think in the US we had a little bit of we look down upon maybe some other countries' university systems, but what I saw was actually a very high quality university. I was at the University of New South Wales, and I really enjoyed the opportunities I had there. Getting to, it took me about 2 months, but then I became closer friends with locals, and I became friends with, the Americans that I traveled with. And I think that's really important. I'll just mention one more thing. And after college, the first thing I did was I went into the Peace Corps, which is probably like the most quintessential intercultural exchange. So this was my first chance to fully immerse myself in a truly different culture. In that case, I was a math and computer science teacher in a secondary school in rural Tanzania. In the
Tanzania, out of all places.
Yeah, so I was that was definitely challenging. So I also had to learn the language, Swahili, and I, believe it or not, I actually speak Swahili thanks to that. It was really eye-opening to what does it mean in that time. It was pre-cell phone, pre most of the digital technologies that we're used to be truly disconnected and fully immersed in a different world. And I think that's probably where I learned what real leadership is. What does it mean to set a goal and do something with meaning, to do something to help other people, and see it through from end to end. So, I'll just give one example. The school that I was working at had burned down. And I actually was able to use my, network to raise funding to have the part of the school rebuilt. And during the time I was there, I saw that project through end to end, right? Like it was and as a 20-something, young 20-something, if I went to New York and worked on Wall Street, I would have never had that type of leadership experience of being a project developer, manager, executor, end to end. So definitely intercultural, international experience. I think if you're able to have access to it, profoundly benefits your life and worldview. I'll stop there for now, and we're happy to go deeper.
So how long were you there for in Tanzania?
3 years total.
Wow, quite a long time. It's quite a long time.
Yeah, so
I'm sure you made a few good friends along the way, and you still keep in touch.
Yeah, for sure. So 2 years were required, and 1 year I stayed on optional on my own. So for sure. Yeah.
So in what you're describing your story, I get, well, and also to your line of work with Dalbert, like you said, you do most of your work, or exclusively your work with social impact, consultants for them. Do you think having the empathy to kind of feel different race, different countries, social status, economical status, different linguistic background, everything else, do you think having having certain experience going into a third, fourth country, staying there for 3 years, working with the locals, does that enhance your ability to emphasize with people in that way?
Absolutely. I mean, I get this question quite a bit. I do career advice for a lot of young people. And a lot of people ask, well, wow, you went to the Peace Corps instead of like doing more traditional. That was brave. And I respond like with the same way that I just said. I had access to leadership opportunities, but I also gained expertise, particularly on the empathy side, that benefits me and will benefit me beyond a professional career, right? And I often
Absolutely.
look at the work I do now at Dahlberg is that I have the ability in my head, at least, to walk with the people that I'm trying to help, because I know their lived experience. I know what their life is like.
Mm-hmm.
I can empathize and understand, what does it mean to live without electricity? What does it mean to live in poverty? What does it mean to have down a road 2 hours away from the closest market? And it's different to see it on a piece of paper and look it on a video on TV than to actually experience it yourself. So I definitely, in all levels, it created empathy.
Yeah, so leaving these differences, that's exactly nowadays where Americans, Canadian, well, North America in general, and people who live in North America tend to take for granted and kind of overlook and be graceful, and having that experience and living there, I'm sure that impact you and shape you into in a way a better person, right? Because that comparison you're able to see. So well, that leads me to my next question, really. At your firm, when you guys do your hiring and trying to look for candidates, is there anything specifically regarding what we just talked about that you are looking for? To both point to international, being educated international, having international background, and also being able to give people sympathy and sympathize with people easily, that sort of thing. Because I look at that as ability, when I do my hiring here.
Absolutely. And now it's a little bit tricky because there's two sides of this, right? And so the latter I'll explain in a second is something that I've been awoken to more recently, which is that people who have had the chance to study abroad often come from higher income status or higher stratus in the socioeconomic profile. And so if you recruit people just based on, hey, did you go to a good school, or did you study abroad, or did you whatever, you're going to tend to recruit people who have had access to opportunity, who often most of the time are the highest income, or so you're maintaining the status quo. So you have to temper that with looking for personality traits of people who have the ability to understand or create empathy even within the circumstances that they live. So even if you may not have had the opportunity, like I was lucky enough to have, and many others may have the opportunity to do several study abroads or take 2 years and volunteer, essentially, there are other ways you can gain international experience and create that empathy. So I definitely think we look for people first of all, you have to cross the bar in terms of skills, right? But you have to be, the technical bar has to be there. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
you do a case interview process, which is pretty rigorous. You have 4 rounds of case interviews, etc. But once you pass that, it's all about character, right? Values, what you're trying to achieve, what are your passions, what are you interested, what do you want to do with your life, right? And that's where you start to get into this, like, what have you seen? What do you understand? Is it just based on what you've read, or is it actually lived experience? And so we very much look for character.
And the character, the very character you're looking for cannot be better shaped by being there, seeing it with your own eyes, talking to local people, traveling around the world, opening up to other culture, and letting other culture kind of, you know, feed into your person, your character. So I do tend to find people have multiple culture background, who has done, you know, a lot of traveling in the past or spending years abroad. I do find these people in general in life to be more characteristic, right? With a little more charisma. And you just want to be more friendly with them, right? They can tell you more, their story are much more interesting. And I think the same thing applies in work and you know, employment to a certain extent. So I agree with you 100% on that. And Kusi, we're running out of time, but I'd like to chat with you more if I have a chance. I'm sure we'll reconnect on a personal level. Thank you, Kusi.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with that, I'm going to bring out our last and final guest speaker of today, Dr. Tan, who really is the most interesting person that I wanted to meet in the entire doctor kind of spectrum. Dr. Tan, if you can join us on camera. Dr. Tan?
Hi, can you hear me? Hello, can you see me?
You're still wearing your doctor suit. That's good. So Dr. Tang, I know you're a very busy doctor. You know, but for those of you who don't know Dr. Tang works for Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, and which is one of the busiest hospital. And she's OBGYN by trade. And the story is, came from China, educated here in the United States, stayed. Now, the amazing part of her story is she has delivered, what is it, like more than 6,000 babies in New York for New Yorkers? That's quite an amazing accomplishment. I'll let you speak to your own story, please. I'll leave the mic to you.
Okay, so my background is very, very similar to your background, but I'm not nearly as accomplished as any of these other speakers before me. So I feel very honored to be invited to this young aspiring leadership group. And I learned so much just by listening to your stories. And that encourages me to further incorporate a lot of the concepts and ideas into my daily workflow. So in summary, I was born and raised in China and left China 30-some years ago and came to United States to pursue higher education. My initial landing spot was a little interesting. I was in Wisconsin, and I grew up in Shanghai. It was a huge metropolis city. Ended up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's a very small, conservative, cold city and state. First time saw snow in my life. 12 inches of snow. So I didn't know how to take the bus. I didn't really know how to use the how to walk in the snow. So it was a huge cultural shock to me to just assimilate into the U.S. culture in this Midwest culture, which is very different from the bicoastal culture. The East and West is very different, California, New York. But I benefited a lot by living in Wisconsin for 10 years. I learned conservative. I learned the local people, what they like to do. This basically bread and butter American cultures, like men eat meat and potatoes, and they like to go hunting, fishing. They on the weekends they drink beers, they watch ball games. So I learned all these when I was really living in Wisconsin for 10 years. My passion since I was a child is to become a doctor, and especially doctor in women's healthcare, because I feel that I can take care of someone who are from, how amazing is it, from like literally 15 or 20 years old to from both ends of their lives, from the way beginning to the end. And in the middle of it, you see the blossom of their life, have children's. And then you just follow up with them, their pregnancies, and they're delivering their babies, and they keep coming back to see you. So it's a very intense and intimate relationship with all the patients I've taken care of over the last 24 years. So that's what I wanted to do. And I have to say, the education, US education, has provided me with the opportunity, many opportunities to achieve what I wanted to achieve, my dream since I was a child. I had to give affirmative actions credit. I was when I was applying for medical school. I very, very fortunate to be one of the minority students, even though we're saying Asians are not minority anymore in university. But in medical school, when I went to University of Wisconsin Medical School, I felt there was only a few Asian American medical students at the time I enrolled in the medical school from like 1994 to 1998. And I had to thank for the affirmative actions and also the openness from the admission officers. They were very open to my background. They were very open-minded and welcoming my background growing up in China, in a very very different country when I grew up in China compared to what it is now. And my experience have really impressed them. They wanted to embrace me. They wanted to enroll me. They know this is what I wanted to do. And that really helped me, my background as an international, kind of like international student. But I grew up my roots deep in America since I moved here. So I'm thankful for my background education in China, and then my college and grad school, medical school education in Wisconsin. After I finished medical school, I moved here to New York. I always felt I needed more diversity, where I will fit in a little bit more, given my unique background from growing up in China, lived in Wisconsin. I felt New York is where I wanted to be. I actually initially lived in the Bronx for 5 years, where I did my residency at Albert Einstein. That's where you see a lot more diverse population, completely different from where I was in Wisconsin. But that enhanced my, again, empathy, as well as, you see different people from different socio-economical and culture, as well as linguistic background, that you see the melting pot here in New York City. And that really blended very, very well of what I wanted to achieve in my life goals, to provide services for women, not just one particular group, basically embraces women from all different background, culture, socio-economical background. After I finished, I moved to New York, Manhattan. I've been here since 2002, for almost 20 years now. I tied up bridges for the Chinese communities, and we did international studies, visiting scholarships between the Chinese medical centers and here. Because of my fluent Chinese, Mandarins, my language backgrounds, I was able to bridge a lot of the exchange programs between the hospital as well as here, as well as in China. I continue to try to collaborate between the hospital here and hospital in China. In 2018, I completed a fellowship training in acupuncture, because I believe in integrating the Eastern and Western medicine. I wanted to be in the forefront of the integrative healthcare for women. And I was asked to be our leader in the integrative complementary medicine in our department earlier this year. So I will continue to bring in the integrative, especially traditional Chinese medicine, into our department. And
that's very interesting. So you guys have a department called the Integrated Medicine for Women's Health at Mount Sinai, starting from this year?
Yes, it just literally just started, and they asked me if I wanted to be spearheaded to use my expertise, which like I just literally myself got my acupuncture certifications, and I wanted to take this to the next level, do more research, do more collaborations, and all the supports that I can get, that will be very helpful for us to be actually the first probably major medical center to have a complementary and integrative women's healthcare center here. And that can incorporate into many obstetrics and gynecological care that we provide to our patients.
That's amazing, because you're probably one of the only people I had carried this conversation with that truly believe that there's a missing link between Chinese traditional medicine and the Western medicine, which in my opinion both offer very amazing.
现在汤医生在我们的这个网坛上已经宣布了，他主持中医和西医的妇科的这个针灸的创始人。
You may want to go mute.
他全部讲。
I think Dr. Davis got too excited there a little bit.
Okay.
Anyway, so I was saying, between China and US, there's always a missing link in the medicine, no matter how political, however, we'll leave that part alone. But medicine and medical field should be working together, right?
Yeah.
Chinese medicine has 1,000 years of history, and it works. It works. However, the modern science and modern medicine is defined and kind of shaped in a way by the Western education and the Western doctors. That missing link and the clinical trial wise is just tough to pursue. The reason I'm saying this is my firm, we do a lot of biotech transactions. Right? I've always trying to look for what is the way of running Chinese traditional medicine trials in a Western acceptable manner. That's to my true interest. Very, very profound to hear you say that Mount Sinai now have a program that targeting integration between Chinese and US medicine. Anyways, we'll leave that for a separate topic, a conversation.
Okay, yes. So just to finish my talk, the pandemic has really changed the healthcare system a lot. In the last 2 years, we actually have seen more digital health. That's something that it wasn't there before the pandemic. So I have several IRB, which is Institute project. One of those very interesting project is a digital app application to study how to improve women's postpartum depression and mental health. And it's also one of the first going to be that one of the first FDA approved prescription app for women with postpartum depression. So I'm going to start this open study in the very near future as well. So digital health is have evolved quite significantly in the last 2 years, and I think it will continue to be our daily part of our life, especially 5 to 10 minutes of cognitive behavior therapy treatment through the digital health, like what we always do. Like nowadays, you can't get away from the social platforms. You wake up with a cup of coffee, you check your emails, you check your Twitters, or you check your whatever, the Instagram, whatever we all do. We can't really get away from social platforms. So that's another area that I'm focusing on, is the digital app intervention to women's healthcare, as well as try to bring in the traditional Chinese medicine into our integrative department. So these are my future goals for the next 10, 15 years. And I welcome all the support that I can get.
Well, we'll sincerely wish you the best of luck in your endeavors, and we'll be supportive any chance we get. Well, I want to bring us back a little bit to the education kind of topic here. So, a lot of international students, when they come to the States or, anywhere else to pursue higher education, they tend to choose something easier than pre-med, right? Something, maybe it's business, maybe it's law, maybe it's, physics, but they tend to stay away from the industries that they think they will be squeezed out in the future. They will have a ceiling very easily. And I think pre-medical and being a doctor is one of these professions that they tend to stay away, because I don't simply hear enough international students actually ended up getting a medical degree and going into and become a surgeon or become a doctor. I think most of the people stay away from this. But your experience, what you were just telling us, is the complete opposite, right? University of Michigan at the time, Wisconsin, the admission office opened and welcomed you open-heartedly. And it's the same thing for me. I run, my firm is, in the history of the United States, we're the only independently run full-service investment bank by American Chinese. And when I first go into my line of work, the Wall Street community opened themselves up and welcomed me warmly. And it's still the same thing up to this day. So what would you say to the students that coming to pursue higher education and are scared or skeptical about going into a crowded space or competitive space, and to be specific, trying to go into pursue a doctor degree? What would you say to them?
Well, I gave the outline before. Do not give up. Do not
give up.
Do not give up. Set a goal for yourself. You obviously have to do what you're passionate, what you wanted to do every day. You can't wake up, do things that you don't want to do. So being a doctor, see patients, to talk to interesting patients, to have an impact in their lives and to create cherishable moment with them and for their life is what I wanted to, looking forward to do every day. So everybody has to have a goal. If they don't, it's okay. You can change your goals throughout your life. Depends on what your interests may change. It's just like women is a perfect example, right? A woman who's in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, we have different hormone productions. Our hormone, our response, our body changes. So you don't always have one final goal in your life, which is, for me, it was very easy. I want to be a doctor. I wanted to do this, but not everybody are born to have a focused goal, right? You will kind of figure it out through your life experience what will work for you. So the thing that I have to say is do not give up. It was extremely difficult to get into medical school. It was extremely difficult to get into one of the competitive residency training programs in OBGYN, which, as you know, there's in America, most of residency training program in the top competitive field only take American grads. You fill 95 to 98% of the OBGYN trainings by American grads. They don't really take a lot of foreign graduates. But you just do one step, to take baby steps, and you have to be believing yourself that you can do it.
One thing I think is extremely important to point out, and we're running out of time, is you said American grads. That does not mean you have to be American to go into the residency. You just need to graduate from American school. And if you're international students who's pursuing medical school here in the United States, then you qualify, right? Because I want to make that clear.
Right. Correct.
One last thing, Dr. Tao. We're running out of time, and I need to bring Steve back to the conversation. One thing before I let you go. So we all know going into medical school and pursuing a doctorate degree needs big vocabularies, and these are vocabularies that we don't use on a day-to-day basis. How big of a push and how difficult was it for you coming from China, living in Wisconsin for 10 years, and then going? How difficult was it for you to overcome those obstacles in terms of your language and vocabulary skills?
Yes, it took me 6 years to finish college, so it was a bit difficult. Despite the fact that we actually all learned English as a second language in high school, I believe that in China you have to have a second language. So I did learn English as a second language in high school, but the amount of vocabulary that we learned, it was nearly not enough. So it took me a couple transitional years before I was able to pass all the tests that's required to get into medical school. It was difficult. I landed in a community college initially just for transitioning to learn languages. And then I transferred to university. Then I got accepted into the medical school. So you take baby steps as long as you
there you go.
Have your goal set. You will get there. Don't give up.
All right, set a goal, baby steps, don't give up. Thank you, Dr. Tao. We appreciate your time. I know you can go back to your patients. Thank you. Okay, Steve, I think we have everybody, and that video we played from Sophia was a little, I think we're breaking in and out of it. I just got the message from our tech team. So what we're going to do is maybe we'll post that video also on the website of our FWE forum. And for those of you who are interested to watch it again, you can go on our website. We'll send you a link to follow up with that. Steve, are you here with us?
I am, Edric.
We had amazing guest speakers today, and every single one of them has a tremendous amount of experience and a good story, amazing stories that are shaped by their international educated background. And each of them, I would say, have a different kind of exposure too, right? Sophia is from France and went to China and UK. Kusi, Australia, Africa, US, and Dr. Tang, China and US, Tony, who's not back in Beijing, but running a firm. So I just think the forum has become such a good place of minds and people communicating. And I'm truly honored to be here and to be the moderator today.
Edric, I thank you for doing that. I thank all the panelists for participating. I guess my observation before we close is that I think that each of you is a leader in your own right, in your own field, in your own life, in your own community. I think your leadership is in some measure obviously informed by who you are as an individual, how you were raised, etc. But I think leadership is also about perspective. And I think what you have all done is demonstrated that through your international educational experiences, you have gained perspective. And that perspective has allowed you to take on a leadership role in your own respective fields. And that's what the Young Leadership Program of FWE is about. It's about demonstrating that as you gain that perspective, as you broaden your understanding of the world, you actually can bring not only back to your community what you have learned, but it also allows you to continue to grow and to prosper. And for that, I think this session was extremely valuable in terms of being able to look at each one of you and see what you have been able to accomplish in your own life. And so I thank each of you for participating. And I put you all up as exemplary to all of those who have been able to watch this session today. And I hope that it is beneficial for all those who were able to participate.
Absolutely. So Steve, we will conclude the session with what Sophia had quoted from Albert Einstein today, right? We must not only learn to tolerate our own differences, we must welcome them as richness and diversity, which can lead to true intelligence. That's the same thing as what you were pointing out for perspective. That's where it's coming from. And that's an important takeaway for everyone that's on the call today. With that, we want to wish everyone a good night, a good day, no matter where you are, and have an amazing rest of your night or rest of the day. We'll see you next time. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.